Controlled Substance: The Silent War. The story of mass control rarely begins with jackbooted marches or blaring sirens. It starts quietly, in fluorescent-lit committee rooms where acronyms blur into one another and the clatter of coffee cups drowns out the moral calculus of the moment. In 2008, while the nation's attention was fixed on collapsing banks and flashing red stock tickers, a little-known pharmaceutical startup called Helixia Therapeutics won its first federal contract. The award, tucked away inside a sprawling defense appropriations bill, described neuromodulatory counter-fatigue research. The dollar figure, $67 million, barely registered against trillion-dollar bailouts, yet it was enough to seed an empire. Helixia's public facade was pristine. Its CEO, Dr. Meredith Sloan, spoke with the poise of a TED Talk luminary, preaching an almost evangelical belief in equitable pharmacology. She told investors that medicine should be preemptive, personalized, and pervasive. What she whispered only to a trusted inner circle was the fourth P: programmable. Behind closed doors, Sloan posited that the biochemical pathways governing aggression, compliance, and even fertility could be toggled like digital switches if one held the right molecular key. To reach that future, Helixia needed both money and regulatory air cover. The first came from defense appropriations. The second arrived via the FDA's little-used expanded access for investigational therapies provision, repurposed in the wake of wartime exigency. Under the banner of troop welfare, Helixia could test compounds on enlisted volunteers with minimal oversight. By late 2010, the firm's Phase 1 trial, a pill codenamed Tranquility 3, was underway at Forward Operating Base Anvil. Soldiers reported fewer nightmares and, curiously, fewer questions about the war itself. Chaplains described a palpable sedation of conscience. One infantryman wrote that angry memories felt filed away under thick glass. Military brass considered it a therapeutic triumph. Congress doubled Helixia's funding. The company's headquarters, 3 floors of a converted hosiery mill in Raleigh, buzzed with venture capitalists, ex-DARPA neuroscientists, and marketing strategists cribbed from Silicon Valley. As combat operations wound down, Helixia faced an existential question: what to do with a drug custom-built for war zone psychology when the war had shifted to drone screens? Sloan's answer: move Tranquility 3, slightly reformulated, onto the domestic market. The rebrand was elegant: gentler dosage, new trade name Lumeris. Focus group data revealed millions of Americans anxious about economic inequality and social polarization. A shortcut to calm sounded irresistible. Retail pharmacies could not keep Lumeris in stock. Insurance giants, dazzled by reduced workplace disputes, placed it on preferred formularies. Employers sponsored office Serenity Days, where nurses handed out sample packs near HR cubicles. Adverse event sections in the prescribing information stayed suspiciously lean. By 2016, half of Congress was taking Helixia donations. A quarter had publicly praised the company's mental health revolution. Freedom of information requests concerning Tranquility 3 were stonewalled on grounds of national security. When the journal Neuroethics attempted a special issue on pharmacological social engineering, its top submissions were mysteriously withdrawn. Yet, for all its lobbying muscle, Helixia could not silence every skeptic. Dr. Marcus Velez, a University of Chicago pharmacologist, noticed a troubling signal in Medicare data. Lumeris users had a 38% lower voter turnout rate in 2016 than matched controls. His preprint went viral. Helixia stock dipped 10 points overnight. Sloan responded by announcing Phase 4 trials aimed at societal well-being indicators, a euphemism so brazen that think tank analysts scrambled to redefine public health metric. What began as a benevolent-sounding partnership was, in truth, the quiet handshake that cemented a public-private governance model. If the ballot box was noisy, unpredictable democracy, Helixia promised something sleeker: chemical consensus. In a nation exhausted by crisis, the offer to turn down the collective volume landed like the sweetest lullaby ever sung. The seeds of dependency were sown. All that remained was harvest. The covert architecture of power hides not in alleyways, but in line items. To trace Helixia's ascent is to follow the money, through defense ledgers, university grants, and shell foundations with names like Civic Vitality Initiative. The largest conduit was Project Chrysalis, a $4.7 billion umbrella contract administered by Health and Human Services, yet secretly co-funded by the intelligence community. Publicly, Chrysalis sought stress mitigation technologies for critical populations. Privately, it pursued chemical levers of mass behavior. Inside Helixia's research block C, whiteboards overflowed with gene expression heat maps. Dr. Yara Hassan, the lead bioinformatician, had achieved what pharma boards deemed impossible, a catalog of polymorphisms that predicted political dissent. Investors saw trillion-dollar vistas of precision governance. Next came wearables. Partnering with a consumer electronics giant, Helixia embedded saliva sensors into popular fitness bands. The devices routed biochemical telemetry to cloud algorithms that pinged local pharmacies for auto refills, sometimes when users felt perfectly calm. Customer service scripts blamed proactive wellness. It was around this time that Giles Moran, a budget analyst at the Office of Management and Budget, stumbled onto Chrysalis. He noticed quarterly disbursements to Helixia funneled through an Air Force logistics account usually reserved for drone maintenance, each amount rounded to prime numbers, an old spook trick. When he asked why, his supervisor muttered, "Stop asking." Moran didn't stop. He partnered with reporter Sarah Kovach of the Washington Sentinel. Their FOIA requests were gagged. Moran's keycard access vanished. The Sentinel received a national security letter. Meanwhile, Helixia scientists celebrated a breakthrough: Harmonil, a compound that could be aerosolized. A VA pilot dispersed microdoses through counseling room vents. Disability claims fell 60%. With aerosolization came distribution challenges, until Sloan hosted 6 committee chairs at the Jefferson Hotel. Over foie gras, she pitched integrating Harmonil into municipal water treatment as a resilience additive. 2 weeks later, the Infrastructure Resilience Act quietly inserted a clause allowing pilot additives to enhance psychological well-being. Across the Atlantic, the European Medicines Agency balked at Harmonil's neurotox data, demanding full dossiers. The threat of scrutiny birthed whistleblowers. Nurse Natalie Pierce smuggled trial data to independent researchers after her brother, an aerosol volunteer, developed micro-seizures. Inspector General Rohan Iqbal, auditing pandemic funds, uncovered emails planning to fold Harmonil into future vaccine adjuvants. Helixia's directors debated damage control in oak-lined boardrooms. PR gurus suggested opioid town philanthropy. Data strategists proposed compliance dashboards for preempting civic unrest. Sloan's closing directive chilled the room. Goodwill buys time, data buys obedience. We need both. Project Chrysalis still slept in its cocoon, but Moran's puzzle pieces, Pierce's flash drives, and Iqbal's subpoenas hovered like antibodies searching for a breach. Early 2018, the pilot cities, Raleigh, Dayton, Tucson, posted the lowest violent crime rates in 2 decades. Yet ER nurses noted the glasshouse effect. Trauma patients described injuries with eerie detachment. Helixia's dashboards pulsed green. Sentiment analysis showed declines in protest language, road rage tweets, even sarcastic memes. Junior analyst Jun Park spotted an anomaly. Suicide ideation posts rose 12% in high-exposure areas. 2 hours after flagging it, his credentials were revoked. Meanwhile, Moran, now in hiding, hacked EPA sensors and confirmed nationwide aerosol traces. The Sentinel's interactive map titled "The Air We Breathe" exploded online, though official media dismissed it. Inside the Office of Behavioral Sovereignty, Deputy Director Roland Chase urged a pause. Sloan replied, "Perception is the disease. We control the cure." The board escalated doses instead. Soon, obstetricians logged a surge in stillbirths. Epidemiologists, seeing no pathogen, blamed vaping chemistry, courtesy of Helixia-funded studies. July 4, 2019 became the breaking point. 27 veterans collapsed during a televised parade. Identical EKG signatures of serotonergic overload. #Charcher's Silent War trended overnight. Helixia issued a token recall of Lumeris tablets, framing contamination as culprit while leaving aerosols untouched. Candela, Velez, Moran, Pierce, Iqbal, countered by leaking memos proving Helixia knew the QT interval risk in 2014. Public panic met chemically blunted outrage. The population's capacity for fury had been amortized. Candela needed legal traction. They allied with Midwestern water utility managers to file a federal injunction. Judge Eliana Brooks denied an executive privilege claim and live-streamed testimony. Fetal tissue assays, aerosol plumes mapped to downwind voting patterns, Sloan's selective amnesia. Clinical compliance cracked. Overt control or collapse loomed. Outside the courthouse, protesters chanted a single word: awake. Whether plea or prophecy, no observer could yet say. Autumn 2019 arrived with the great quieting. Traffic thinned, venues emptied. Candela knew hormonal saturation nudged citizens toward introversion and political apathy. Agent Elias Kwan of DHS, a former combat medic, linked ambulance bradycardia clusters to aerosol zones and joined Candela. They gained a smoking gun from Dr. Lena Hart, a water treatment engineer who shipped barrel samples labeled Project Chrysalis Stabilizer. Horizon Network agreed to air the expose until Helixia shareholder Titancom bought the network overnight. Candela pivoted. They leaked a DIY tap water test kit. Within 24 hours, fluorescent vials glowed in kitchens nationwide. R's water test challenge hit 30 million views. Helixia's board triggered Protocol Nightingale, flooding feeds with deepfake riot footage to justify curfews and heavier aerosol boosts. Citizen livestreams debunked the riots. Split-screen memes, news versus now, cratered corporate media trust. Governors deployed fact-checking satellites. Nightingale's credibility imploded. Sloan's primetime apology, promising a temporary suspension, inflamed public fury. Federal marshals raided Helixia's Raleigh campus on Halloween. Yet millions faced withdrawal from drugs they never chose. Hospitals braced for a national psychological hangover. Candela drafted tapering protocols, lobbied for truth and reconciliation panels, and testified before the Senate. The great quieting ended. The noise of accountability began. Across the Atlantic, the EMA coined neurosurveillance and warned against any system-altering neurochemistry without consent. WHO called an emergency assembly. Grassroots science networks mapped reservoirs like open-source cartographers. Economists forecast a compliance recession. Creativity surged as complacency waned. Street murals, albums, and documentaries like Quiet No More flourished. Candela published the Manifesto of Cognitive Liberty, translated into 40 languages and projected onto city halls. The domino effect had begun. Candela's revolution, once a whisper, now thundered worldwide. On January 20th, 2021, the Commission on Cognitive Rights opened in the National Museum of Natural History, a hall once filled with fossils now hosting a nation evolving in real time. Testimony ran 5 months, streamed gavel to gavel, beating professional sports ratings. The interim report confirmed that hormonal derivatives had coursed through 64% of U.S. water systems. Recommendations included nationwide pipe flushing, mental health triage, and a moratorium on neuroactive additives. Congress imposed a forensic levy on pharma mergers to fund remediation. Internationally, the manifesto catalyzed the Helsinki Accord on neurochemical weapons. 53 nations outlawed involuntary cognitive manipulation. Markets wobbled, then rebounded as firms pivoted to transparent, consent-based therapeutics. The personal reckoning proved raw. Households navigated unfiltered emotions. Therapists developed resensitization protocols. Support group patrons recalled their first dreams in years, chaotic but undeniably theirs. Art galleries mounted return to feeling, canvases slathered with riotous color. Candela evolved from guerrilla cell to public institute. Its board, Velez, Pierce, Iqbal, Park, Hart, and Kwan, launched open-source neurochemical sensors, affordable for high school labs. During the live stream, Velez quoted Dickinson, "Far better an imperfect hymn than coerced silence." In a supermax facility, Meredith Sloan faced 47 counts, including crimes against humanity. She refused sedatives. Her final statement read, "The pursuit of harmony clouded our judgment. May discord remind us we are alive." Water utility technicians finally logged 0 harmonial residues. Chicago erupted in impromptu fireworks. Velez watched from his rooftop, savoring honest clamor. Economists noted an initial productivity dip as workers questioned rote tasks, but a year later, innovation metrics doubled. Indie films, patents, neighborhood cooperatives bloomed. Courts grappled with contracts signed under undisclosed manipulation. In Pierce v. Aquaclear, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that such agreements were voidable. Educational curricula added neuroliteracy beside civics, and children took oaths to think freely and defend the freedom of thought. The Helsinki Accord soon faced its first challenge when an unaligned nation tested a focus enhancer aerosol for classrooms. Rapid sanctions crushed the scheme. Media transformed into vigilance engines with nightly Neurowatch segments. Fiction's new genre, neuro-noir, warned against future seductions of effortless peace. By late 2023, the country settled into a vibrant equilibrium. Street debates replaced doom scrolling. Voter turnout hit century highs. Historians wrote that the silent war's greatest casualty was not life, but the illusion that calm equaled health. Society learned painfully that progress devoid of consent rewinds into oppression, however glossy its marketing. And in quiet moments, yes, quiet moments remained. Parents told bedtime stories about heroes who defended the right to feel. Children drifted to sleep unmedicated, dreams brimming with untamed possibility. The final reckoning did not end with verdicts or policy reforms, but with a cultural vow whispered in countless languages: never again without consent. Whether humanity will honor that pledge remains to be seen, but for now the once quiet world roars with the unpredictable music of minds once more free to think their own thoughts.